Welcome back, creative people. My name's Dave Allen. This is my studio, and this is all part of a series called Making a Platter series, and this is part 3, so stick around, I've got a lot to talk about. And as a quick review from last week, you remember we generated transparencies, we coated a screen, and then we took our transparencies with UV blocking ink in them to use photosensitive emulsion to burn an image onto a screen. And if you remember from 2 weeks ago, we rolled out that initial slab, and now it's just perfect, ready to be printed on. So we're going to use these screens and print with this red, yellow, and blue ink, which is called underglaze, which is just ink for ceramics that can be fired. And hopefully, at the end, we're going to print a 4-color print that looks like a photograph. So stick around, there's a lot more to show you. And before we jump right into printing, I just want to review that we have 6 screens and we're breaking our print up into 2 different sections. The rock, which is a 2-color separation, and the photographic background, which we're going to do a formal 4-color separation on these screens right here. So here we are, finally ready to print. All of the work that we've done so far is in preparation for this session right here, where we're going to use the underglazes and the screens that we prepped on the slab that we roll to make a print. So the first color we're going to use is red. And that screen looks like this. And I'm going to very carefully lay out the screen on top of our slab and then mix our underglaze so it's nice and consistent. And now that I have the screen in position and the underglaze really nicely mixed, I'm going to add a thin line of underglaze to my screen, and then I'm going to work with a rubber squeegee to scrape this underglaze over the screen. And this is my squeegee. And that looks like this. And that's our first layer. And here's a close-up of what our first layer looks like. And now I'm going to take this screen, scrape off the extra underglaze, and go wash it and prep our next color. And up next is our yellow layer, which looks like this. And our yellow underglaze, which looks like this. And here we are, all registered and ready to print the yellow layer. So once again, I'm just going to add a thin line of yellow underglaze to my screen, use my squeegee, and carefully but with pretty firm pressure pull my underglaze over my image. And that's the yellow and red layer together. You can see how it's starting to look like a photograph. You can see the flagpole, grass is coming in. So it'll get more interesting as the darker colors come. And next is our blue layer. And that screen looks like this. And this one's going to be more dramatic than the other two because blue is a pretty dark hue, at least in ceramics. And we're all registered and ready to print the blue. So this should be a more interesting one than the other two. And here's the blue layer, and even though we only printed 3 colors, red, yellow, then blue, you can see the illusion of green. You can see many other tones of red and blue and purple happening. And that's from those little tiny dots overlapping and creating 3, 4, 5, 6 different color combinations. And our eye is using the illusion of those colors blending together. And then last, but most important, is the black layer, or what's also called the master layer, because this is the one that really creates the photographic imagery in 4-color separation. And here we are, all registered, inked, and ready to go for our final layer, our black layer, or our master layer. And let's see what that looks like. And here's a detail of what the final layer looks like, the black layer. And you can see it really begins to look more like a photograph with each layer. But you can see how the green came in, the yellow looks good, and the blue really does make it look like sky. So keep in mind, these colors do get a lot brighter when they're fired. So right now, the particles are kind of trying to fight the clay to make the color. So they will get very bright once it's fired, and even look more like a photograph. So now that we have our 4-color separation done, which is this photograph in the background, we're going to work on the 2-color separation, or the foreground, or the rock that's in the foreground. You want to start with the hardest piece, and that would be the 4-color separation, before you get into the 2-color separation, because that should, in theory, be a lot easier. So I've got the white layer all prepped and ready to go, and this time I'm going to print with glaze. So I want the rock to be a little bit shinier, so the underglaze is fairly matte or satin, and in this case I want the rock to just be a little shinier in the foreground, so I'm going to print with glaze instead of underglaze. And here we are with our white layer for our 2-tone separation with the white glaze that we're going to pull on the screen. That looks like that. And there's our white. And here's our white glaze layer. It's subtle, it's more subtle than the rest, but it should be kind of shiny, which should separate it from this background, or this photographic imagery in the background. And so now that we've got the white layer printed, we're going to print the black layer next on top of it for our 2-tone print. And the black, once again, will be the master layer, or the more dominant one in the print. And here we are all set up to print our final layer, and that's the black layer on the 2-tone rock. So it's pretty important that you get it right on the last layer, because it's the last thing you do to the print. And here's our final print. This is what it looks like with all 6 layers printed on our clay slab. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. That's this week's segment, and we did a 4-color separation and a 2-color separation, printed wet materials on a wet slab of clay using underglazes in the screens that we prepped from the previous episode. So stick around next week. We're going to go and attach a wet coil of clay on the potter's wheel and throw this thing out. And that'll be the last wet part of the process that we do. And then the final week will be glazing. So I've got a bunch more to share, and thank you for the Gordon School for letting me share my practice.